It's a fascinating story in the Gemara Baba Metzia, Daf Pevav, and it goes like this. God in heaven and his heavenly court, the angels, were having a debate regarding a halacha of tzaras. This week's Parsha talks about tzaras, and just for brevity, I'll explain in short. If there's a skin discoloration followed by a white hair growing in that white discoloration, that is a symptom of tumah, of impurity, and has to be dealt with accordingly. If there's first a white hair and then a white discoloration around the white hair, that's not considered tameh. The discoloration has to come first, and then the white hair has to grow or become white after the skin becomes discolored. The debate between Hashem and his court was, what happens if we don't know? What happened if we're not sure if the hair grew if the hair became white before the skin became white, or if the skin became white before the hair became white? The heavenly court said that needs to be treated as tameh, as impure. Hashem said it should be treated as pure. They asked, who is there that could reconcile our debate? Let's go down to planet Earth. There's an Amira named Rabba Bar Nachmani, and he claims to be Yachid bin Agayim. He claims to be a unique authority on the halachas of tzaras. He was in the middle of running away from the government at that point. They came down to ask him, and as he was dying, he said, Tahar, Tahar. Based in Shomayla said Tameh. Hashem said Tahar. Rabba Bar Nachmani said Tahar, Tahar. And as he said Tahar, he passed away. His soul left his body. This is obviously a very strange story. First of all, what's the logic of this debate? Why is it that Hashem is saying Tahar? Why is it that his court's saying Tameh? Who gives the heavenly court the audacity to argue with God himself? And why is it that when God and his court are having a debate, who comes to answer the debate? They ask a human down here. What was it that Rabbah said that all of a sudden gave the solution that both parties in the argument accepted? So there's a beautiful Sikhan, Chelek Yud Beis in the Kutei Sichos, where the Rebbe explains this whole story. There was a matter of discussion. What was debated was something wasn't so perfect. There's a flaw on someone's skin. In other words, there's a case of how should I view this imperfect person that has a flaw on his skin? Do I puzzle him? Do I just get debilitated by the problem and start dealing with the damage that already is? That's what the heavenly court, which is a lower level godliness. The heavenly court is limited and deals with the world within its limitations. If I see a discoloration, if I see imperfection in this world, I'm not going to live in a fantasy and pretend there's no imperfection. No, there's a flaw, there's imperfect, there's a sinner, we got to deal with him. Hashem argues. Hashem is the more transcendental reality that's not so stuck in the confines of this world and sees past. Afal pisha chati Yisraelu. There may be a sinner, there may be flaws, but don't view him by his flaws. See past the flaws. See that there's a perfect soul, there's a perfect neshama. View his transcendental self, his neshama. Don't view him by his flaws. And these are obviously, this is a fair debate. One party is seeing the practical half of reality, which is flawed. One half is seeing past that half of reality and is just seeing the perfect core of this person that can never be flawed. So which one's right? And can they both be right? So that's why Hashem said Tahar. Based in Shomayla said Tameh. Rabbah said Tahar, Tahar, which was a different answer than Hashem. He said not only is the core of the person Tahar, I'm not going to negate what Beis in Shomayla said. There's two layers to this person. There's his perfect core, and that we need to accept and celebrate and embrace. There's also his flaws. And the trick is, can we see also in his flaws his perfect neshama? Can we say he's perfect not by closing our eyes to the reality that we see and saying there's no flaws, he's a perfect person? Can we engage the flaws and deal with the imperfection and the issues accordingly, but without seeing the issues as defining the person? With seeing the perfectness in the person and the shlichos he has to deal with by working through his flaws. That's why Rabbah didn't say Tahar like Hashem said. He said Tahar, Tahar. He's Tahar at the transcendental space in his neshama, and he's Tahar practically too. And I'm saying that with open eyes, seeing the flaws that he has. There's a beautiful story I once heard, I hope I'm not embellishing the details, of a Rosh Yeshiva who had one of his students who was struggling with Yiddishkeit, and on Friday night, one time went to a movie theater, and he found out. So he walked to the movie theater, he asked if he could go in. They said, you don't have a ticket. He said, trust me, I'm not going to watch the movie. I have one of my students are over here. So he walked into the theater. He found which movie the student was sitting in, and he sat down next to him for a second. And the student looked, and he sees that his Rosh Hashiva is sitting there at the movie with him, and he starts getting nervous. And he put his arm around the kid's shoulder, and he said, I hope you're having a nice time. You should just know the popcorn and some of the snacks aren't kosher, but the sodas are fine. Those you could have. Have a good night. Love you. See you back at yeshiva. Gave him a kiss on his forehead and walked back home. Obviously, the bacher, when that happened, he walked out with him back to yeshiva. He started telling him jokes together, and they had a nice walk back to yeshiva, and this man's life changed. This is not just ignoring the reality at hand and seeing, even though, yeah, he might be in the dumps, but he has a perfect soul. I'm acknowledging the dumps that he's in. I'm looking to deal with him in the dumps that he's in, but not by just being paralyzed at seeing a flawed person. I'm going to show him, while dealing with his flaws, that he's perfect and valuable there too. He's not only tahar in theoretical space, he's tahar in a practical space too. And with that, Kaiches, he could deal with his issue. Have a great Shabbos.